Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Westford Conservation Commission meeting for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. The first item on our agenda is open forum. Do any members of the commission have something for open forum? Matt?
I have nothing.
Do members of the audience have anything for open forum? Okay. Our next item on the agenda is an appointment with Town Manager Kristen Lass. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Kristen Lass, Town Manager here in Westford, and I spoke with Matt probably several months ago that I was trying to get around to the majority of the boards and commissions if I could, just to introduce myself, to get to know you a little bit better and how our office could assist you in any way that you may need. So I'm just happy to be before you this evening and meet. I've met some of you, but meet others that I have not met. Just a little bit about my background. I actually started as an environmental planner and was writing notice of intents and RDAs and all of that, and going before conservation commissions and planning boards way back in the day for developments for private developers or conservation land purchases and the like. So your work is pretty familiar to me. And then I moved on to the town of Shrewsbury, where I was the planning and economic development director for 6 years, and then the assistant town manager for 7 years, where I oversaw all of the land use departments for that community. So definitely have a familiarity with the work that you do and the thankless job that you're out in the field and reviewing things with Matt and his assistants. So just thanking you all for the work that you do for the town of Westford as well. And just happy to answer any questions or hear any thoughts that you might have, again, how we can assist you moving forward as a commission.
Yeah, as a chair, I'm going to go first this time. Having worked closely with Matt for over a year now, one of the things I would really like to commend the town on is the cooperation between the different departments, the different aspects of the planning department, recreation, DPW, all those different groups. If something's coming up and one group kind of says, oh, this may this may impact another organization, there's proactive communication, people are being brought in a timely manner. And sometimes, we need a little guidance from town council, and it's been very nice how responsive town council has been when we have questions. So I would like to acknowledge those two aspects. Jim.
I had a couple of things on the good side and a couple of things where we could do with some help, perhaps.
Okay.
On the good side, cooperation between town departments. Department of Public Works has helped us out a lot when there's trees that are beyond the capability of our volunteers. Mm-hmm. And then our volunteers, which are unrelated to the town government, the Westford Conservation Trust, they go around and clear the trails of minor blockages and things like that. So we get the minor stuff taken care of volunteers, the bigger stuff by the Department of Public Works, and it saves a lot of money for the town.
Yes.
So those are the good things. The areas where we probably need some help, and we don't even know what kind of help yet, is we do have some problems with some abuse of some of the conservation land that we're in charge of, specifically the Stony Brook Conservation Land or East Boston camps. Over the course of the summer, mostly on beautiful, sunny, warm weekends, we ended up with several people, well, quite a few people, citizens called up, wrote emails, sent pictures of essentially parties on the beaches at the pond. And some were able to call the police department, but nothing came of it. Others don't tell us about it until the following Monday, which makes it unenforceable, uncorrectable. So we do have some problems there. We're looking at some options for perhaps some kind of a additional monitoring. But anyway, that's our problem, one of our problems that we want to work with at the town level.
Absolutely. And Matt did allude to some of those issues that you were dealing with, and he and I had some conversations about some potential options. If whether they have financial impacts or not, we can certainly continue to work on that. And it's certainly amazing the amount of land that your commission manages and looks after. That's another thing that was extremely impressive. Matt was able to take me to a few of the properties about a month or two ago and walk me through some of the sites.
Most of them are problem-free. They really are, but this one, it's off the beaten path, which kind of attracts the crazy parties a bit, so. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to visit us.
Of course, of course.
Anybody else want to? No, okay. Marilyn?
No, I was just going to say, I had thought that it might be possible to use CPC funds for a mounted person, to actually go around. I'm not sure. We're going to investigate the possibility of somebody writing an application for that to see whether that would be something that when we did have money we could put into, because we have over, 2,000 acres? But particularly East Boston camps in those areas, that would relieve, the town staff from having to do anything and might try something. I'm not sure, where did I say that it was done? Was it Concord? Either Concord or Lincoln or one of them.
Concord had the more ranger land steward position
I think for
than
part-time.
some of the other.
I just think that's doable, and so it might be something we can, somebody, I can't write it, obviously, if I'm sitting on the board. But that's a possibility for funding.
All I can say is, I've been on the Conservation Commission nearly 30 years. It'll be 30 in April. But I mean, there are many members here who have been 20 plus. So you have a commission here with a lot of experience. We take our charge seriously.
We love it, or we wouldn't do
we
it.
love every minute of it. So, yeah, it's a great thing.
Thank you for that history. Great.
I don't know. I see her on a daily basis. I try to stay out
We're
of
on a
her.
first name basis now.
I try to stay out of her office.
Great. Well, again, thank you for all you do, and looking forward to hearing more on a day-to-day basis. And I might stick around to hear Steve's presentation and the great things that are happening over at Jack Walsh. So, again, don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything or have any thoughts or suggestions. You can certainly reach me at any time. Thank you for having me tonight.
Pleasure to have you stop by.
We're not quite to 7:10. Do you have something from the discussion you'd like to?
Sure, I can do hit a couple, I think. The public meeting participation requirements. So after speaking with Kristen, it is town policy, through the select board, to have speakers identify themselves. I think it does, and it's also just good practice for the minutes taker, so that they have at least an opportunity to identify who speaks and record it in the minutes. So something to be mindful of, to make sure we try to get the name of people speaking during the meeting. The Cloverleaf Lane enforcement update, I do not have an update on that at this time. And the broken bench along the Stony Brook Trail, have not heard any update. I was going to follow up this week, as they said the end of September, and being the middle of September, it's just to remind them and see where we are in the schedule.
Well, are they in Leominster?
Yes.
Oh.
I will I'll send a friend. I'll see a friend. I'll ask her very friendly.
Okay. Okay, I think we're close enough to 7:10. 7:10 p.m. agenda item. It's a continuation of a public hearing for the Town of Westford Department of Public Works, 90 Carlisle Road, the Jack Walsh Recreation Area.
Thank you very much. Steve Crone, Director of Public Works, here with Hippolito Aguilera from Nesra Engineering, our consultant on this project. So I apologize for not being able to make the meeting on the 23rd. I was with my daughter in college, but I did have a chance to review the meeting and the comments that were made, and we've been working with Nesra to try to address some of those comments. And I'll let Hippolito explain the changes that have been made to the plan, and certainly look forward to hearing your feedback.
Good evening, members of the commission. So we had discussed at the previous meeting a few changes that you wanted to see on the updates to Jack Walsh. And if you go to C5.
Can you talk into the mic a little? That's possible. It won't be.
Is this a little bit better?
Yes, it's.
Thank you. So we did go through the process of updating the plan. We did, first of all, revise the plan to two things: to reduce and shift the tennis courts. So up near the top, near the northwest of the site, this particular area, we did reduce the size of the court by 2.3 feet to match. This corner here shows you kind of like what the existing conditions are on the site. So now the new court matches that existing court location at this end. And we did still remain by cutting the corners to reduce some of that impervious pavement here. We also shifted the court to the left 6 feet so that it matches the existing court on the right side, which is the north side of the tennis courts. So that was one of the changes that was requested. We did go ahead and do that. Along with that, we did modify the design. Previously, the previous pavement walkway was located on the northwest, which is closest to the wetlands. We, at your suggestion, and we thought it was a great suggestion, we modified the new ADA walkway to come around the basketball courts on this side, and we did put the benches and the trash can, which was a concern. We did put it away or further away from the wetland side here. So we modified the ADA access and moved the gates so that folks can enter sort of at the center of the courts, which is, you know, here to the tennis court and then here to the pickleball courts. The other plans that we did, so we updated the particular plan, which is a materials and layout plan, to include the 4 new trees depicted here. What you see here in gray is kind of like the existing conditions. So it might be a little confusing, but basically what this shows is what the existing conditions is, but the actual layout plan is what it's going to look like once it's all finalized, which is darker, more bolder lines and structures identified here. So we have the 4 new trees that are planted because these particular 4 trees are going to be unfortunately taken away because of the construction entrance that we need to provide. We would ideally like to do it here, but there's just not enough room. But unfortunately, we're going to replace these. Well, fortunately, we're going to replace the trees, but remove these. And this is the new location of the trees, proposed new location, if that works for the commission. Those are relatively the extent of the changes. Because we moved on C6, which is the next sheet, the only change here is that we modified the elevation at this corner because now we're pulling back a little bit to the original location, so that elevation number was changed on this particular plan. And lastly, we identified all the sort of distances to the wetlands. You see a TW for 2 wetlands and a TS for 2 stream, and those are these measurements here from the closest point at each of the locations, which was also at the request of the commission, which was a good request. I think I've covered really the changes requested. I don't know if the commission had any questions.
So I have one. You know, we had talked about maybe doing 3 pickleball courts before and reorienting because we were concerned about how close he was to the flag up in the corner up here, I believe was one, and I don't know if that had been reduced since the last plan. Looks like he's still 19.5 feet from the edge of the chain link fence to one of the flags. Am I right?
To the stream.
Matt?
Yeah, to the...
Wasn't that where we were before? Or were we closer?
I think it's closer, if you look on the plan, where's my pointer? The existing courts do come to a point, our 90-degree corner. So that certainly is closer to both the wetland and the stream. So, that nearest...
Is that paved court right there?
That's existing paved court.
Yes. Yeah, so the light gray is your existing court, and we did shift this down so that the new court matches.
See it. I see it.
Yeah.
Hard to see on the scale.
It's very difficult, and I apologize because it's kind of...
at this scale.
Yeah, and then we've clipped the corners of the court, obviously, to try to reduce impervious on that side.
The 4 trees being planted, those were the calorie pear trees? Is that what you're planning on putting there?
That's what was suggested.
That's what was
on our-
suggested. We have talked about, trying to identify species that are in the town's invasive and tree management plan as a, potential species that we could use. This was what was recommended.
Those are a non-native species, so generally we'd like to have a native species put in there.
Okay.
Is there a particular species that the commission would
Well,
recommend?
what are the ones being cut down? Do you know? Maples, oaks?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know offhand, but
Matt, do you
They
know?
have a list of native species.
Would we
that are-
want, at this point, does the commission have thoughts about whether we'd want a deciduous or an evergreen tree? In terms of, thinking about screening and wildlife habitat?
That'd probably be better for maintenance. Like, you're gonna have leaves everywhere if you have trees
Yeah,
that
so
close.
yeah, maybe some kind of an evergreen.
Or let
Something
them
that
make the
doesn't go
choice
too
from the,
yeah, I mean, here,
or at least have it be an indigenous. you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
in working with our resident pickleball players, they do like the proximity of the trees to the courts because they say that it helps to keep the wind down, which I guess can impact play. So certainly, I think an evergreen, over time will help to kind of establish that barrier and sort of help that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the commission? Matt?
I can add the condition as if the commission is considering a negative determination with conditions, I can add 4 indigenous evergreen species shall be planted as shown, in the location shown.
Okay.
Are there any comments or questions from members of the audience on this project? Okay, so can I have a motion to issue a conditional negative determination?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very,
you.
very much.
Moving on to our 7:15 PM agenda item, a public hearing for Fox River LLC.
Under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Westford's non-zoning wetlands bylaw, Chapter 171, the Westford Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, at 7:15 PM in Meeting Room 201 at Town Hall, 55 Main Street, to consider the notice of intent application of Fox River LLC for the construction of a 14,400 square foot commercial building, parking lot, fencing, retaining walls, infiltration system, 2 renaturalization areas totaling 9,720 square feet, and the relocation of utilities, portions of which are within 100 feet of bordering vegetative wetlands, bank and bordering land subject to flooding, and/or within 200 feet of Vine Brook, a perennial stream, at PO 210 and unnumbered parcel on Littleton Road.
Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening.
Long time
Douglas
no
DeShane, representing
No.
Fox River LLC. A pleasure to be back in front of you. And
Nice to
Eric,
see
you
you.
couldn't have been on the board that long because
Yeah,
I was on the board when you joined, and I'm not that old.
And you are that old. I
I'm
hate
not
to
that
say
old.
it, but you are.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations
That's
to
an
you as well.
amazing accomplishment, 30 years.
For us all,
Yeah. So, again, Douglas DeShane with Finneran and Nicholson, representing Fox River LLC. With me this evening, Kevin Riapelli from DTG Associates, our engineers on the project. Also with him, Bert Corey, is over there from DTG. As you may know, my client is proposing to build a daycare facility down on 110 at 0 and 210 Littleton Road. Well, I remember we recall this property was originally part of the Very Fine site many years ago.
Time ago.
Yep.
And there's been a number of potential developments proposed, but after all these years, they seem to have settled on a daycare. So we're here tonight to present you the project and give you an understanding of of what we're proposing to do and certainly answer any questions you might have. We have also filed concurrently with the planning board for site plan review, so I know that they will be reviewing drainage and stormwater as well, so we would hope to coordinate that review. I don't know if the commission would look to town engineers or outside peer reviewers, and quite honestly, I don't even know what the planning board's going to do. You probably know better than I, but
Coordinate.
we can, we're certainly willing or hoping to coordinate that with you. So with that, I will turn things over to Kevin, and Kevin will give you a quick overview of what's being proposed. And here's a little
Excellent.
one
Thank
of
you.
those things.
Again, Kevin Riappel with DGT, Project Civil Engineer. Matt, if you could go to sheet C5, please, or actually, no, C3. Perfect, we'll start there. So as Doug stated, we are proposing to build a 14,400 square foot daycare facility at the property located at 208 Littleton Road. We looked at a lot of different options, a lot of different types of development at the site. Given the site constraints here, obviously there are a lot of wetlands, riverfront area, Vine Brook, floodplain, as well as some zoning setbacks. So when we're looking at the site, we really tried to push everything as far away from the wetlands and the associated buffer zones as possible. Really trying to keep the development on this site as close to Littleton Road as possible. As Doug said, we are filing with the planning board. We are also filing an A&R for this site as well. So the daycare facility will be on its own lot. I believe we're meeting with the planning board next week to hopefully have that A&R endorsed by them. Again, the parcel's relatively undeveloped at this point. I'm sure we all know where this is. It's a lot of wooded upland areas, a maintained lawn area, and a very long, winding paved driveway that leads out to a office building off the plan up here. Resource areas at the site, Vine Brook is at the property, which is a perennial stream. There is BVW at the site, and these resource areas were delineated by MacArthur Environmental Consulting in May of this year. Unfortunately, Susan MacArthur had to travel and couldn't be here this evening, but she is planning on attending further conservation hearings to help us out because we're not wetland experts. There's also the FEMA 100-year floodplain and the associated locally regulated floodplain buffer on the site as well. And the 50-foot locally regulated buffer is shown on our plan set as well. I believe when I last spoke with Susan, she had noted that Matt had been to the site to verify the wetlands.
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't have any concern.
Okay.
The wetland delineation looked appropriate.
Okay. All right. So as we look at the plan here, relatively rectangular building, 14,400 square feet, new parking lot with 50 parking spaces between Littleton Road and the building. Access to the site is through the existing paved driveway, and we're proposing to make a slight realignment to this existing driveway just to get us a little more space so that we can build out the required playground areas right next to the building. There'll be associated fencing to delineate the different playground areas. And there are some retaining walls, a little low retaining wall here to break the grade. As you come into the site, the grade does come down, and we need to keep this area relatively flat around the building to keep ADA compliance. On-site utilities, there'll be an on-site subsurface sewage disposal system. That will be located underneath the parking lot here. All components of the sewage disposal system are outside of all the buffer zones and riverfront areas. Water and water utilities will be brought into the site, domestic and fire protection water services. Fairly simple stormwater system for this site. We did some soil testing, and we found favorable soil conditions at the site, relatively sandy soils, and a relatively deep groundwater table, so it's conducive to doing some infiltration here. So we're going to collect the runoff from the parking lot, the repaved portion of the existing driveway, as well as all of the clean roof runoff from the new building. All of that will be collected and brought over to the opposite side of the existing driveway, where there'll be 2 underground infiltration systems. I won't bore you all with the nitty-gritty details of our stormwater design, but given the favorable soil conditions, we are able to mitigate up to the 100-year storm event with no overflow. So we're getting a lot of water back into the ground, which is rare. So we are proposing 2 areas. Obviously, there's a large increase in impervious area here between the building and the new parking lot. As such, we're proposing 2 different areas. Area number 1 is 6,500 square feet. Area number 2 is 3,220 square feet. We're proposing that those 2 areas be renaturalized with a wildflower mix and left to renaturalize on their own. This area over here is actually all maintained lawn space right now, and it's within the 50-foot buffer zone, so we're proposing to renaturalize this whole portion of the site here, as well as this larger area here. Some of it is in the 50-foot buffer here, but again, the majority is within the remaining riverfront area there as well. Obviously, riverfront, there's approximately 163,000 square feet of riverfront area on the site. Under existing conditions, we're at 65,300 square feet of altered area, which is roughly 40% of the total riverfront. And under proposed conditions, when all is said and done, we're proposing 57,900, give or take, square feet, which is 35.5% of the riverfront area to be altered. So the project is proposing a reduction in altered area on the site when all is said and done. Again, obviously, erosion controls will be installed at the down gradient areas. Our site plans include all of the provisions and performance standards as required, and a SWIP will be filed for the NIPD's permit for this project as well. Yes, sorry. All work is being proposed outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. That's inclusive of all the site grading, the repaving of the driveway, all of the stormwater management, including the emergency overflow. All of the work is going to remain outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. So we are able to respect that. With that, that's the very quick tour of the project. We do have a very detailed plan set, which I'm sure will get fully looked at and everything, but at this point, if anybody has questions.
Your snow storage? That's typically the
I was going to give you guys a chance to ask questions. But yes, I've got my I've got my list here. So, anybody else have questions?
Start with your list.
Okay, so reading the project description, it talked about the site being 2.56 acres.
That's incorrect. It's
Okay.
a 10-acre site.
Okay, that helps a lot.
We had our heads spinning with that this afternoon as well, so yes, that was a
Okay.
typo.
Then moving on to the long-term pollution prevention plan portion. Section 3.1 talks about typical snow plowing operations. You push the snow off the side. It doesn't really talk about, that it talks about the roadway. It doesn't talk about what typical snow plowing operations would be for the parking lot, which I believe has, how many?
50. There are 50 proposed parking spaces.
Yeah, so what would the typical snow plowing operation be for something that was, I don't know, 6, 8 inches or less?
Typically, we have a provision here on a plan to push all of the snow to this side of the site here. Obviously, we want to keep the site clear between the parking lot and the building there, so we would envision the snow being pushed either to the end of the parking lot and stacked in here, or also along this long edge here, or even in front of the site as well.
Okay. The other thing that I looked at is you have a snow storage area on look at the right side there. Snow storage area, is that specifically for when the road is being plowed, or is that where you might put, if you think you can store, if you think the snowfall is not excessive so that you have to take it off-site, were you planning to stockpile snow there, or?
No, I think that's just for the general clearing of the roadway.
Okay, so in fact, that area would extend to the end of the paving on the site?
Likely to, yes.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure how they maintain the snow on this existing driveway today, but again, we're trying to provide the snow storage outside of the buffer zones and as far from the wetlands as possible. Obviously, we don't want to be storing snow in through here right against the existing pond area.
Okay, with the 2 areas that you're now allowing to renaturalize,
Yeah.
would that be,
I was going to ask the ratio.
well, no, I was gonna say, is that something where it would be grassland that would be mowed once a year to keep out woody vegetation, or you'll allow whatever nature wants to let grow?
We're proposing to seed it with a native wildflower mix
Okay,
and just let it go.
Okay.
If it requires a mowing once every 1 or 2 years, just to knock down some of the other things that we don't really want growing in there, we would be amenable to that, but our thought and vision for that would be just let it go back to natural and let the native take over.
okay.
What's the ratio
The ratio,
of what you're returning to natural versus what you're taking away? Remember we used to have 1.5?
No, we're not actually like taking wetlands and then reproducing them.
Okay, we're just
We're
adding
building on an altered site. We're just going to reduce the
Okay, I got it.
altered
I got
The
it.
amount of alteration.
Okay,
of existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay, that answers what I,
with the 2 rechargers,
Yes.
is there a reason that they're located there? My first thought was, that's a structure we're putting into the outer riparian zone. And the question that came to my mind is, could those be put under the playground area so they're still in the proximity of the wetlands, but they're more outside the riparian zone?
So my understanding with these playground areas, there are foundations associated with the play structures that are there. These are Caltech-style HDPE chamber systems. So we've seen in the past, keeping them out of playground areas is advantageous. It becomes a real coordination nightmare and construction because these guys want to go in and put in their concrete foundations for the play structures and.
So the same reason you wouldn't put it under a paved parking area?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
okay. I just, you know.
Exactly. I mean, again, we had favorable soil conditions over here. It just lent itself to wanting to put the water there.
And my last question, because a lot of times we hear the fire department wants to be able to get all sides of the building, and I'm just wondering what their feedback was, given how limited the access would be to one of the long sides and one of the short sides.
Sure. It's a good point. We did demonstrate that we can get the standard Westford fire truck in and out of the site safely without having to back out onto 110. I don't think we've had the conversations yet with the fire department as far as access around the building yet, so it's something that we can certainly explore.
And the reason that I bring it up is because, you know, when it comes to we're asking you to naturalize something, then they're saying we want to be able to get our fire truck in there.
Yep,
We want to be on the same page.
sure.
So,
Yep.
okay. I'm done. Eric?
No, I'm still, it sounded like they were talking about pushing that snow all the way over to where the dumpster enclosure is, that concrete pad at some point. And there's also that concrete pad for a transformer with
yep.
electrical.
Yep.
If you're gonna push a bunch of snow over there, is that the best place to be also having the dumpster and that pad for the transformer? I'm just wondering if there's a more suitable location for that.
I mean, the transformer pad, we can adjust the location of that. We can push that closer to the retaining wall and closer to the playground area.
I just want to give you more room to push snow.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah. No,
if you
that's-
want to push it there, you've got things there.
Yep, yep.
You got anything, Jim?
Nope.
Matt,
Matt?
There is an outstanding order of conditions for
possible.
the existing 210 from, I think, the early 2000s. They they sought approval to put in fountains. I didn't see any fountains when I was out there, but it was one of those, just wanted to check with the, if you can check with the property owner about closing it out, and, is there any infrastructure that was, electrical infrastructure that was associated with it?
Sure.
Yep, clean it up.
Absolutely.
And then my only other thought was related to kind of the recharge chambers on C6.
Yep.
where they're being proposed, certainly, there are trees being proposed to be removed for, and again, this is also kind of to the commission, you know, the applicant has designed it in such a way to stay as far as possible from the wetland resources, but with this, they'd be cutting down, I think it's 4 trees, a pine,
A lot of apples on the.
and 3, well, there's apples on the other side. I think these are maples, and 3 maples.
Oak and maple on one
You know,
side.
Can he shift it and not do that?
right, you know, is it
Either
possible
that
to
or
shift it
replant.
more closer to the wetland resource, you know, or further to the south, you know, kind of in this area? You know, just explore the, you know, is there the opportunity to achieve the same
To
infiltration?
be able to put it there and save the tree.
Yeah, and save the trees. you know.
What about if we were to leave it where it is, but then plant new trees between the infiltration system and the buffer zone, right
Right in through here.
in through there?
That's where those slopes are,
We could do it at the bottom
or
of the slope.
at the bottom of
You
the
know,
slope.
that way,
just along the
we're
50-foot buffer
providing
zone.
more,
For me too,
more
as long as you
buffer,
replace them. As
more
long as you
buffer,
replace them.
and not pushing that closer. Whichever the commission would prefer. I mean, we can look at moving the system closer and leaving the trees, or
Would you rather leave the trees that are there?
I mean, they certainly are mature trees. I don't have a preference one way or the other.
Well, maybe we can explore the opportunity.
all right, we'll look
Yeah,
at
we
it.
can certainly look at
We'll
it.
look
Sure.
at the trees,
Sure, sure.
see what we can do, and
Yeah.
propose something.
And I think what would be helpful is to have an inventory of what those trees are. So, you know, the type of tree, the caliber, so that we know what we've got.
They are.
They're labeled at the
Okay.
species, with, you know, what,
There are-
apple,
Yeah.
oak, pine, yeah.
Yeah, so it would
Mostly
be a
map-sized.
20-inch pine,
Okay.
12-inch
So-
maple, 16-inch maple, and a
Plant
good
more
sized
mature
tree.
trees.
12-inch
Those are
maple.
good trees.
Yeah, they are.
It begs the question with some of the larger trees, if we're moving the rechargers, can we move it far enough away that it's not going to impact the root network for some of those trees?
That's, you know, it's
Yeah,
kind of.
that was the
Something else we have to
question.
look at too, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like there's really, you know, one of the thoughts might be, although it's not in the buffer, is planting trees to provide screening between the facility and the roadway, but I think, you know, I don't know that there's room to do that.
Yeah, it gets pretty tight in through
Okay.
this side over here.
So,
Okay.
any comments or questions from members of the audience on this project? Okay, in terms of when you come back to see us next,
So I believe we're slated to meet with the planning board on October 2nd.
okay,
I know there is another Conservation Commission hearing between that meeting and tonight. I think we should probably wait until after we meet with
so the
planning
October
for the
11th?
first time.
Yes, the meeting following would be October 11th.
October 11th?
And if, you know, need to continue, do that as well.
Okay.
Okay. Can I have a motion to continue the public hearing until October 11th? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you on the
We'll see you on the
11th.
11th. Thank you, yeah.
Okay, moving on to our 7:25 PM agenda item, continued public hearing and, for Canal McGaw, 29 Kais Road.
Set?
Yep,
Well, good evening. Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson, here for Camille Cornell. With me, Dan Smith, our civil engineer on the project. I know you've met with Dan before. I have not been involved in these hearings previously. However, Ms. Cornell is unable to be here, so she asked me to fill in. That'd be a nice opportunity to visit.
Senior.
Little did I know I was going to have another hearing, but in any event, as I understand it, Dan and my client have been working with the commission to reconstruct that wall that's been on Kai's Road since I lived there many years ago. And I know you've been through the details. I could just say from personal knowledge, I mean, this is probably a good thing, both in terms of safety and aesthetics and, you know, protection. So I'm glad to see this is happening. I understand that you have reviewed the original plans. You had asked Dan to provide you some updated plans, which was done. It was updated to show the 100-foot buffer zone. It was, well, let me get my list, Dan, so I don't miss anything, okay? So it was revised to show, add the 100-foot buffer zone to the plans. The plans were revised to show the board, the commission, what the conditions would be at the end of Phase 1 and at the end of Phase 2, so that you would have an understanding of the site through the phases. We identified the tree, a single tree that needs to be removed.
It's back one sheet.
It's back one sheet, there it is. That is the, as I understand the tree we are looking to remove, so we added that. We've provided you more details on the wall itself. It is not going to be a poured concrete wall, but rather it's a block wall with a finished face on it, or a stone face, finished type of face on it. And so that gives you all the details of how this wall will be constructed. We did update and revise the landscaping plan, which I believe was in conformance with, you know, what the commission was looking for. And did we provide a breakdown of those plans? And
Yeah,
there's a breakdown of that.
They're actually called out on another sheet that I think didn't get sent through to you. Oh, there it is, sorry.
There it is, great.
Yep, so they're all called out.
So there's some more
each different
details.
tree and thing, and type of plant and bush.
I did also, Matt was kind enough to send us a draft of orders in the event the board is ready to do that. We've reviewed it. My client had one question concerning the phosphorus prohibition. She told me her only lawn is in the back of the building, and so she was wondering why she would be restricted. I did explain to her that it's a town-wide program. We're trying to restrict phosphorus, and while the lawn might not be in the buffer zone, clearly it's uphill of the resource area, so anything you put on your lawn could move. So, but other than that, she was fine with the conditions as proposed, and Dan and I are here to answer any other questions you have or provide any more information you want.
You had some other, could you slide it down? I think there was another picture or two you had after this one. No, not this one. I think, there you go. It's. Just trying to understand. There's the wall in the back, then there's the retaining wall and a retaining wall.
Yeah, so this is 100% complete, after all.
No, and I know, and that's.
So this is the main retaining wall that's along.
Which is still a 10-foot high wall. That's 200 feet long, correct?
That's correct.
That's what we ascertained last.
Yep.
Okay, and then the next one is what? Another 8 foot?
That's the
One behind it.
One behind it that's set back.
Right.
That's 7 feet.
And then what's that on top of that?
That is a small fence, like decorative, fence.
Right on top of that retaining wall.
Yeah, it would be slightly behind it, by a foot or so. But yeah, it would essentially be at the top elevation of the higher retaining wall.
So I've got a 10-foot wall, then another 8-foot wall. What happens if somebody's walking along the edge of that 10-foot wall or 8-foot wall and falls off? I mean, one of the arguments we heard in the beginning was, kids could climb on my rocks before, and it was a problem. Now I'm wonder if people are worried about, like, kids potentially falling off something that's 10 feet high.
Well, I would suspect
And, yeah, and,
out of
you
the
know, it
railing,
just- You know, I was listening to that argument before, but I look what this is now, and this seems to be more dangerous than what's currently there.
Well, the wall that's currently there is this exact same condition. It's an edge that you could step right off the edge of.
It's boulders that are laid, but actually, if you look at the existing grade with those boulders, that's been in place for quite some time without very much movement at all. So, you know, I don't think it's that precarious of a situation. I know the planning board didn't point that wall out when they were doing what they were doing. They simply had that furthest wall in place as part of what they approved. But there was never any inclination that the existing wall that's there today was problematic. I would have thought the planning board would have pointed that out, and they didn't.
If it were, again, I think it was included in the previous, with the original opening of the public hearing. The plan utilized for the variance in 2021, 2020, 2021, just showed the addition, the front addition and the porch.
So the planning board has not seen the modification,
I think it would be the zoning board would
have.
But I'm just saying, at the planning board at the time, when they were proposed what was being done, the improvements on the front of the home, there was no discussion at that point with the planning board for these retaining walls?
The zoning board of appeal, so I can, if I recall, the zoning board of appeal plan, which this is based off of, this plot plan's based off of, the original submission that they reviewed was this grade area, the proposed porch and, I think it was just the porch and this addition. Because there were two encroachments into the front yard setback as proposed. At that time, sorry about that, people.
And then there was that proposed block wall right there.
That was not included.
That wasn't included.
That wasn't there. What the zoning board of appeals reviewed was this grade-in area here and the circular addition. The proposed concrete, this phase one wall, nor the two additional block walls were included in the
Variance for front yard setback?
in the relief for the front yard setback.
So, with the two walls that are in essence being reconstructed by this proposal, does the fact that the new walls are slightly different than the original walls, does that, how does that play into needing a front setback, a front lot lines, or a front?
Relief from the front.
Yes.
I don't want to speak for the building commissioner, but where there are existing retaining walls and there are existing retaining walls in the front yard setback, they, may be considered non-conforming pre-existing structures.
Okay, in terms
But
of.
that's something the building commissioner would have.
But they couldn't make it any more.
I wouldn't.
That's
Yes,
not-
but that's really the building commissioner's
Okay.
jurisdiction.
Okay. And so that L-shaped wall is actually an addition, that's not, is that replacing something that was previously approved?
There is a wall kind of,
stone.
Yeah, there's a higher stone wall.
you can kind of see it's, again, gets
Okay,
lost in the scan, but, or more so in the projector, in this location.
okay. Then, but where the phase one proposed concrete block wall, is there anything in that location today?
There's a retaining wall.
Yeah, there's stone,
Yeah,
there's
okay, so
more
there's-
boulder.
Here.
There's there's upper boulder walls up in this area here that create what was intended to I believe to be a staircase that
Okay.
comes from the driveway up and then
Yeah.
brings you to the front door of the house. But it's, the stairs are non-existent. I mean, it's just steeply sloped grade with grass on it right now. And then just the boulder stone walls are there in this area.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so this wall here, which is really part of the patio and porch addition off the front of the house here. So this is like hardscape landing off of a stair, and it's on some of the other sheets. But, and then you continue to step down and make your way down to the driveway. So that's the one right there. So, yeah, so this is that L-shaped wall here in order to break grade and provide the structure to build all this up against and bring the steps down, and then a flat spot and a landing, and then slopes down and then meets the driveway here by the garage doors and is level with this space here. And that's all in phase one. And that's the upper boulder walls there that would come out in phase one. And the lower wall stays at the end of phase one. That doesn't get, touched as part of the first part of the work. So if you go back, Matt, back a couple of sheets. So there you go. So like this is the upper wall here. This is that whole phase one addition and patio off the house. And that's all that's being done in phase one. So the rest of all of this lower section down here and all this is part of phase two.
While we're here, all these plans show Kai's Public Road.
Yep.
Are the edges of that the edges of the right-of-way or the edges of the paved surface?
This right here would be the edges of the paved surface,
Okay, so,
right along, what we're outlining here.
now, Matt, can you go to the final? Because then, my concern is looking at how close to the edge of that paved surface a lot of that
Yeah.
landscaping is in terms of snow being plowed, pedestrians, vehicles maybe needing to pass. I'm wondering if this design really provides sufficient space between the edge of the planting and the edge of the pavement for
cars,
For cars,
pedestrians, what
for-
have you, yeah.
Yeah, it concerns me that the plantings come that close.
Sorry. There's some space there, existingly. So this is like a, proposed idea of what you could do with some plantings there. I know from last time, some of the conversation was around trying to, beautify the wall, if you will, with plantings. And so that was what this is a preliminary, stab at doing. She doesn't have a final landscaping plan, at the moment, but it would be along these lines. But sure, yeah, these bushes and trees and things could be pulled back tighter to the wall and not be out there as close to the
And that's I think that's part of what we want to see is a plan of record that really starts to get into the detail of, as we start to look at an as-built, is how much space is allowed between the edge of pavement and the edge of landscaping or whatever. And it also, the other question that pops into my mind is, if that's the edge of pavement, where is the edge of the public right-of-way? In terms of if some of this planting is actually not happening on.
Well, you don't want it to be on the town right away.
Right, exactly, so where is actually the property line here?
Could we go back to the
Yeah, that's-
A&R plan?
Here we go.
So all of those distances are measured from the right-of-way,
What distances?
These right here.
right?
Okay,
So
And, the
so the pavement
utility pole,
okay.
so that's the edge of the public right-of-way.
Okay.
Right, and this darker line is her property line,
Okay, so,
come along here. and go
okay,
So plantings over here at this end of the wall would have to be worked in to, obviously not go over that line.
yeah, and this is where, is we're really looking for a plan that can be handed to a contractor who's going to manage this work, and really, that person has the information they need to deliver the project the way we've all discussed. Is looking at a lot of these plans, there's not the detail that gives me a lot of confidence that you hand this to a contractor and they're going to be able to deliver the project the way it's being discussed now. This is where the plan of record that the contractor is going to use becomes very, very important in terms of knowing where they plant, knowing how things are structured. The other thing that concerned me, and Matt, if you can go back to the end of phase 1, is we understand that there's going to be a time delay between the end of
one
phase
more.
1. Yeah,
Right there.
yeah, between the end of phase 1 and when phase 2 starts. I look at these slopes, I look at where material and equipment is going to be staged, and I am very concerned about the stability. If we have significant rain events, if we have the kinds of things that we've had happen on this hill, I don't really want to rely on a series of control measures along the edge of the road to really prevent a catastrophic release of material going into the pond or into the roadway or wherever it goes. This,
It hit the neighbor's house before it hit the pond.
And one of the things, you hit upon is, it says in order of conditions number 32, it talks about the disturbance and, during each phase. And one of the questions I had at our last meeting was, okay, how are you going to do this? How are you going to remove those boulders? How are you going to build the blocks, put the blocks up? How are you going to stabilize that? How are you going to move forward as you do the project? This isn't answering my question. This is just saying, hey, we're going to come up with a plan that's can be approved by the commissioner or the agent, but I have to prove that as part of the order of conditions and approve the project. I want to see that before I approve the project.
That's a good point, because you had brought that up at the last meeting, is when we're taking out the boulders in a 10-foot high wall, what is going to be the step-by-step sequence that a contractor is going to do to make sure that all the soil behind that stays in place, that we don't have a catastrophic failure?
It's like when we cut into a road, when the town does that or whatever, they talk about the steps. We're going to do this. We're going to put this there. We're going to backfill. We're only going to go so far. I don't want somebody to get ahead of themselves and all of a sudden, like you say, it always seems to be the case. Well, we got a little ahead of ourselves because we could do something and we weren't expecting the rain, but we had the catastrophic and it was a miscommunication or, a perfect sequence of events that led to an event. And it's like, I don't want to hear that.
What?
I want to know how somebody's going to do something, like you say, so they can hand it off to somebody who's actually going to do the work, and they have a plan. I'm more concerned about 2 years from now, or whatever, Matt getting, a plan in comply or in accordance with, order of conditions number 32, and then we're having to figure that out after the fact. I want to figure it out beforehand.
Yeah, because as you bring up, we're going to be, these are fairly large boulders that make up this wall. It's going to take significant equipment. It's going to take,
It's going to take time.
It's what's the whole process for the equipment that's going to need to remove those boulders? Where are those boulders going to go as soon as they're removed? How is the work going to be planned so that that entire stretch stays stable while this is going on?
It's an unusual piece of property. It's a huge...
Well, it's a lot of engineering going on right
Yes,
here.
it's probably one of the most complex walls we've seen.
It's the most engineered wall sequence I've seen in town.
And it feels scary not to know, if one thing went wrong, as opposed to disapproving, what you want to do. Okay? I don't have any trouble with the plantings and that sort of thing, but I do worry about the stability I mean, I didn't expect the rain to look like it's looking now at 88, okay? The world is changing. So if you could provide us with that, it would at least, we'd have made an attempt for it, you know, and we wouldn't be scrambling after the fact.
Or the contractor who's doing the work isn't having to kind of come up with this in the field.
I think it's got to be some sort of a narrative description of exactly what's, the diagrams show this is phase one, this is phase one, this is phase one, but it doesn't say what comes first, how do you do it, how are each of these done. It's got to be some sort of a narrative that describes the process it's going to go through to go from the beginning of the project to the end.
And it tells the person who's doing
However
it.
many phases there are,
Yeah.
whatever.
That would be
And the
safer.
possibility that it's a different contractor for phase one than it is for phase
Right,
two.
and we don't even know how long it's going to take in between them. It could be a whole construction season, or, you know.
Could be longer.
Right, could be longer, yep.
So we need our worries.
Until
and-
a lot of unknowns until we actually have a contractor to talk to.
Right, that's part of our problem. But we can certainly put together a reasonable construction, detailed, reasonable construction format. Although, you know, there is a likelihood, and I would suggest that if we get there, you keep that condition in there that, you know, prior to construction, we have to provide an updated. So in the event, we hire a contractor who says, oh yeah, that's all great, except I'd rather do this step interim, you know, we can get that to you. So we'll put together a more
Well,
detailed.
then they could come back to us with that at
So-
that
For the
point.
modification.
Yeah, for a
request.
So there should be a
modification.
vehicle built into this, okay? A vehicle built into it, that if you need something else done, you intercede.
Well, that's this, he wants to leave
That's
this
what
in
I'm
here.
saying.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
give you this detailed
Yeah,
construction
okay.
secret based on best engineering practices.
Okay.
But when the time comes, that currently says we have to give you that plan before we start. What I
it
would
should
suggest
say-
is
it
it say,
stays in there.
before you start, you verify that there is no changes to that.
Right.
Because, again, a contractor might come in and say, yeah, those are all the steps, except we'd rather do this here or move the blocks
they
this
have to
way,
come
because they know what they're doing. That way, we'd be required to give you that updated plan. But as far as today's plan, or the plan we're going to provide to you, I just want to make a couple of comments so that we know what we're doing. First of all, I really don't know, other than a detailed construction sequence, what we can offer for erosion control that is, you know,
Erosion control, where you've got material stockpiling, show erosion control around that.
okay, great, those are
The other thing would be.
Well, we actually captured the whole property is what we did.
we could put
Well,
some.
We can add more.
Yeah.
With,
When it blows right through, that's,
yeah, the enforcement order that we had just up the street from here, on part of the same hill, we had an incredible release of material out into the roadway. Just
the
from a heavy
resource area.
rainstorm. And it wasn't even a hurricane. You know, it just, yeah, it's, we have to be really thoughtful, proactive. The other thing is, for example, when you're doing phase one, how much of this above the slope here is going to get torn up with equipment? What's the plan to stabilize that? So it, you know, we don't have to worry about soil that's maybe not completely stabilized over winter. You know, these are, having had issues on this hill, these are the things we think about.
well,
And-
jute matting and other things like that
Yeah.
we've used on other sites that had, you know, steep slopes.
Yeah, and those, so those are the kinds of things that we would want an expert to come in and say, this is how we would handle it. Doug, to your point about, you know, we've got a sequence, and now we've got a contractor, and the contractor's coming in. Just in the due diligence, and with years on this board and all the things I've seen, one of the concern, I want to go far enough into this that I'm,
Sleeping at night?
well, it's more if the contractor comes in and says it can't be done that way.
Yeah.
You know, those, I'm, with a lot of this is one of those sites that with these slopes, with the pond nearby, I'm really concerned about the worst case.
Well, I think if we're able to put together a detailed phasing plan that addresses, you know, removal, stockpile, erosion control, you know, detailed for each phase. I guess in my mind, one of the things that, gives me some comfort is that they're going to do phase one before they touch those, the big walls in the front. So, those will be in place and stable while they do phase one. And then once phase one is stabilized and completed, then, as you know, phase two is they'll address the front. So I think if we provide a more detailed construction sequence, which includes erosion control and stabilization measures during each of the phases, I think that will help. And I hear what you're saying about, well, what happens if we do all that great work and we all agree to it and we have an order of conditions, and then your contractor comes in and says, oh, I can't do it that way. Well, I guess, first of all, we're going to only be able to talk to contractors who feel they can do it within the scope of what our approvals are. But I do suggest we keep that provision that says, prior to any work, you will provide us either, verification that the phasing plan or the
When it's going to happen.
hasn't
how it's gonna
changed,
happen.
and or you'll give us those details. The other thing we can't give you right now, which I know you would like to see, is I can't say to you, well, on day one, we're going to get this done, and then, it'll take us 3 days to remove that, and then we'll start this, and it'll take us 4 days. We could provide you a general framework of that, but honestly, you need the person who's going to be driving the machine to tell us how many days it's going to take to remove the stuff. So that's something we could also provide you before work starts, is a time frame to go along with that
Who
scope.
polices the site? Who polices the site?
It would
And
be,
what-
to make sure that it is.
That's right.
That's
But
me.
each thing is.
I mean, that's me. I mean, there are opportunities if the commission wants to hire a third party.
Or-
I mean, that's not,
I didn't know.
I think that's a second step if,
It's like
it
if we're
isn't being
worried that
managed.
things are happening, or is it?
Right, if.
So maybe with that clause in there, if
That's,
something doesn't feel right, that's the time when we would say, we need somebody on site. I don't know.
So I think, Marilyn, to your
Yeah.
point, so between special condition 32, we're moved away from kind of the plan to the realm of the special conditions. So special condition 32 does, require them to submit a schedule of, here's how long it's going to take to do X stage of it, then we move on to this, and, sometimes there's the overlook, the Gantt chart, I think. And then also, I made a note, to add a special condition regarding verification or confirmation of the narrative, that the narrative will be,
Right.
and if, and there are certainly changes, language for changes in the general conditions, if a modification is substantial or not, that comes back to the
It would be a daily thing
commission.
of knowing what's happening across.
And lastly is,
It's close
if
for a
I don't
while.
have it in here, I can certainly find it and re-add it. But a third party, in the event of, a third party, monitor, for the erosion controls or as such, we can certainly add that back in as a,
If we need another set of eyes.
right, if the site is not being managed appropriately and,
Or if we're worried
I mean,
for
and that could also
weather
be,
or whatever.
right, and it can be addressed prior to an enforcement,
No, I
as the result of an
understand.
enforcement action.
As long as
and
everyone's on the same page.
Well, and actually, Matt, kind of thinking about this, once we get into a construction phase, would you want the contractor, if you've been given a timeline of activities, would you want a weekly or every other week report from the contractor that
So
says?
number 38 has that, and we can certainly, as the commission, and I guess we can scroll to that now, so that.
While you're looking at that, I think, rather than at this point suggest that we should have a third party on there a day, I think that's a great idea, that our contractor would have to provide you, I say weekly, a weekly report on what was accomplished, or, if there were problems or anything, and that could be provided to, the commission
To Matt.
once a week. Also know that not only do you and Matt have the right to come out and look at it any time, I also think the building inspector will be keeping an eye on things as well.
Well, that was what I was going to say, is that there's, you know, a good possibility with how this is, you know, not, you know, typical residential construction. He might issue, got controlled construction be involved as part of the issuing the permit, which would be us making those every other week site visits and producing field reports and everything and submitting
So
those
Matt, you
in.
could make a connection with him too, saying
Yeah.
that we're concerned.
And,
Would he
you
keep
know.
us abreast of it, so it'll be in his?
That would probably be like step number one before going to a third party,
Yeah.
you know?
Please God, we need none of this, you know?
No, I get it. I think it's an excellent idea that we provide a weekly
Better to
report.
worry now than not to have tried to do the best we could.
In phase one, where you're doing the patio area, do you know at this point whether it's, you know, if there's rocks, if there's soil, what material will come out of there that will be stockpiled and saved for phase two?
The stockpiling is really more of a temporary situation while they're just there doing the work and trying to
So
get
you-
material out before you can get it into the trucks
you-
and get it hauled away, right?
So during phase, so there's not stuff coming out of the ground in phase one that's going to be reused in phase two?
Not that I'm aware of, because a
Probably
lot of what we're
not.
pulling out of there is big rocks.
Right, those will go.
And
The
then,
patio area?
Yeah, there's a wall, there's
big
existing
rock
stone,
wall there.
stone boulders up here. Those will go.
Okay.
This, you know, will get excavated in order to be able to come in and place footings and walls and pour, you know, concrete and stuff in here for some of these foundations. Then a lot of that will have to be backfilled. So that would be, so the material, and we had on one of the other drawings there, Matt, we, you know, show this stockpile area right here. Yeah, that's a good one. So this material here would go here, and then some of it, I don't know exactly how much, but some portion of it will go back in, and then some of it will probably end up going in trucks and getting hauled away.
Okay, because,
especially the rocks.
well, what
Yeah.
I was remembering, and I think, and this is my memory, but from the earlier parts of the discussion, there was some talk about the fill that was going to be you know, in terms of doing the walls in phase two, what you would need for fill behind them, et cetera.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that there was,
It could be used for that, sure, but I think, you know, the reality here, and of course, obviously with, you know, the written, you know, description of it all, you know, it will just, you know, spell it out and say it, you know, for you, is that, you know, these are gonna get cleared away.
Okay.
This one over here can only be light duty stuff because actually the leach field's over here and part of this area, so this is kind of more lighter, smaller, just temporary stuff for the contractor would need to lay down some
Okay.
miscellaneous tools and lighter pieces of, you know, building materials and things. This would really be the area where soil materials and things would go temporarily. The idea is that this is their driveway in front of their garage doors, so, you know, that would only be while this is under construction. When this is done, backfilled, you know, and the grading's finished off and left in the condition it would be left in, which would be pretty much almost the condition it is now, to be honest with you.
Okay.
This would go away. This would be
and I think
cleared out.
this is the level of detail that we're looking at as to, you know, phase one, end of phase one, what does it look like, you know, is we really need a clear picture so that, you know, phase one, again, thinking worst case, it might get to the point, there's always the potential that phase one gets done and phase two doesn't. And so a lot of me is thinking that I really want to make sure that at the end of phase one, things are good enough that if for some reason we stop.
Stand alone on its own, yeah.
Yeah, and it never goes anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, so that's the level of detail I'm looking at in terms of having something that I'm confident that if we stopped at the end of phase one for however long, it's safe, and we've got a plan that can tell me what that looks like.
All right. Matt, can you scroll down a couple sheets for me, please? Keep going, right there. So this is essentially the complete finished picture, phase one done. 100% done, stockpiles and everything removed, the existing boulder wall down here left as is, not touched. 'Cause
Okay.
we haven't got into phase 2 yet.
So
So that's the idea.
okay, and this is, yeah, so I think what I'm starting to think would be helpful to have, besides your sequencing, Eric, is, and that is what the proposed plan looks like at the end of phase 1, because in fact, if everything is going to be that stable at the end of, when phase 1 is complete, we can take those erosion controls out till we're ready to start phase 2.
Right.
So,
Which,
okay.
yeah, they've
Yeah.
been removed off the sheet, yep.
Yeah, because it just, that, I think that was where I was starting to, is we really want to see an, proposed plan at the end of phase 1, the proposed plan at the end of phase 2, so we know that
Right.
we're good at both
We're
points.
stable and good to go for each phase, yeah.
So this is the end of phase 1.
Okay,
That could stay for 6 months or 6 years, like that. And then if you go down one more, Matt, this is phase 2, complete, full build-out, done. So now these 2 lower walls and all the landscaping's been added, and the stone wall there's been removed and taken away. And that would be your finished product there.
with this one, can you put the property line on it? So that it's really clear for the
Yep.
contractor where they should not be putting in landscaping in the public right-of-way, just because of the issues that's going to create.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think I have a pretty good understanding of what you want us to do, and I think we can do it.
Okay.
So it'll
So
be,
we'll see you in 2 weeks?
what's that?
2 weeks?
Will that be enough time for you to?
I mean,
Well-
we can certainly continue it, and if we have to continue it, it gets.
Yeah, I think we can. I think Dan and I can sit
That's a good
down and
idea.
draft most of this up. I do want to get some additional information on the, and I'm sure we have it, we just want to show it better, and that is the right-of-way versus the pavement versus the property line.
Yeah.
So we can look closer at that landscaping. And maybe we give Steve a call and just see what the plows think about that and what they want to do. But
Be good to do it before.
you guys will have to understand, though, that if, Steve comes back and says, look, I don't want any big trees in there at all, if you can help it, it's your property. We will have to back down on the trees down there and,
Have to talk about
put
it.
something that's more conducive to what
But
they
we probably
want.
would want trees somewhere else, so think about that.
Well, but it just is, if the concern is screening the wall, it's, okay, maybe the screening of the wall needs to be reconfigured to meet the requirements of, what DPW's criteria are.
Yep, no, that's what I mean. That's, looking at what I've seen, I do think there's room to get some trees up against that wall, which would do the best job of screening it, and even if you put in a 7-8 foot tree to start, it's going to have instant, it's not like when we have to wait for a tree to grow 20 years to give us some buffer. An 8-foot tree against a 10-foot wall is really going to break it up right away, and maybe the species is such that it won't grow to 20. It'll, be
Yeah, I mean,
10 or 12 foot kind of species.
well, yeah, because what I'm thinking about is when you think about the roadway,
Yep.
you think about the retaining wall, there is not going to be a lot of room for a root network for a substantial tree there. Is if we want stuff that's going to be healthy, stuff that's going to last, you really need to be thinking about not just what it looks like when it's planted, but what
What can you put there?
can you put there that's going to survive once it reaches its prime?
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that, that would, like, some thought's been put into that.
Yep.
I think that's what the dwarf spruces are, which I think if we go to that elevation view again from the front, from the street, they're meant to not grow taller than the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That particular, plant, tree, bush,
Non-native,
not sure what
though.
to call it, but, so they wouldn't get that big.
What was the
There's some
variation?
sort of
Norway
spruce.
The only one that listed was the black-eyed Susans are native. All the other ones are non-native invasives.
Well, then we need to revisit that.
Okay.
Non-indigenous,
Non-indigenous.
not invasive.
Yeah,
I'll take a look as well.
Okay.
But
Okay,
Oh, that's,
We'll address that.
okay.
I have enough to think about.
All right, we got a lot to do.
Any comments or questions
Welcome back, Doug.
from the audience?
That's great.
Okay, so can I have a motion to continue the public hearing till September 27th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Let's just take it. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
it's there. It's not sticking around for 3.
The pointer.
What's that?
Okay.
Not sticking around for 3.
So,
There. It was actually-
moving on to our 7:35 PM agenda item, it's a public hearing for Haley, 7 Island Path Road.
Under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Westford's non-zoning wetlands bylaw, Chapter 171, the Westford Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, at 7:35 PM in Meeting Room 201 at Town Hall, 55 Main Street, to consider the notice of intent application of Paige Haley for raising an existing dwelling and constructing a new dwelling within the same footprint within bordering land subject to flooding and within 100 feet of Nabnasset Lake at 7 Island Path Road.
Good evening, for the record, Jim Basile, GPR.
Hi, I'm Paige Haley, the applicant.
You can just talk normally. It'll pick you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up. The commissioner would like, I can give an overview of the project, and then if you have any questions or comments afterwards, I can address those then. So we've prepared a notice of intent for the property at 7 Island Path Road. This is for the demolition of an existing house and construction of a new house within the same footprint. The existing site contains an existing paved driveway that comes off of Island Path Road. The existing house exists right here. There's several residential amenities. There's a fire pit over here, a little walkway, and then the rest of the properties primarily consist of pea stone. There are 2 recent tree plantings over here. The resource areas associated with this project are Lake Nabnasset, existing to the north of the property and to the southwest of the property, with the associated buffer zone shown. The flood zone A is kind of faded back, but it essentially crosses across the existing and proposed building footprint here. So again, the existing building is proposed to be removed. The homeowner would like to update the house to be more up to date with current building code standards, and per conversation with her site contractor and the building commissioner, they're both of the mind that the most feasible and best approach would be to demolish the house in place and then construct the new house in the same footprint. So the new foundation would be, so the existing house would be removed, and then new foundation wall would be installed within that same footprint. There's an interior foundation wall that there's 2 separate crawl spaces over here. This one to the south would be a little bit deeper and provide more of a storage space for the owner, but this area would be a designated flood storage area. The existing house has several openings along the northerly and easterly side of the foundation to accommodate flood waters from the flood zone A. So we would be trying to keep this same practice in place. The foundation proposed would have openings along the northerly and easterly side within the floodplain as well, and this area would just be for that flood storage. No vegetation removal, sorry.
So is it open? Is there a concrete slab underneath? Is it, you
There
know?
would be a slab underneath.
Okay.
And then the openings, they would have like a lattice in front of them.
Okay.
So the no vegetation removal is proposed. The 2 recent plantings would remain in place and protected. We have a straw wattle barrier that surrounds our building envelope with an opening that would be opened and closed as access to the site is needed, stockpiles as needed as well. we show the flood zone A going through our property, and this is based off of the current flood insurance rate map. There is a preliminary one that is out there that actually pulls the flood zone closer to the lake and pulls our house outside of the flood zone entirely. But since it hasn't been released yet, we have to design towards the current flood map, and that's why we have it running through our house and the flood storage area and flood access as we do. We have a elevation called out for the flood zone A at 171.5. There are 5 separate properties on Lake Nebanesset that have at one time or another had a letter of map amendment that has established the elevation of the flood zone A at 171.5. And while these elevations aren't transferable from property to property, the pattern establishing the same elevation for the same body of water suggests that flood water on our property would also seek that same elevation, 171.5. So based on topography from our survey, we established that coming through the building over here. So while the preliminary flood insurance rate map will eventually be officially issued, we felt that it was more conservative to include the flood storage and flood calculations into our approach. And at worst, that space that we've designated as flood storage area, it might go unused if that flood limit is moved closer to the water. But we'd rather have that than not incorporate the flood storage into our design at all, and then find out down the road that we do need some sort of flood storage down there. So that's all I've got for the overview. I believe that we did recently have the DEP file number issued, and I don't think they had any comments, but I'll turn it over to the commission. Any questions, comments?
Matt? Jim? Sorry.
Is there a tight tank, or is there some kind of subsurface septic?
There's a new tight tank was installed by the previous owner. I think it was completed maybe 6 months ago,
Yeah,
this
I
came
think
in
we're going on 9. Yeah.
9 months.
Yeah, it was over winter.
Okay, I remember vaguely something.
Yeah.
I remember the 2 trees.
Yeah,
Yes.
there were 2 trees that were 2 birches that
I
were
remember the
removed.
Keystone yard.
Yeah, the whole
ground.
Keystone. Correct.
And I think it is there you go. There's covers that were identified. I'm like, there's something. I'm sure they showed it.
You're going to be able to use that staging area up there? You're going to be able to drive around the house with construction equipment? You'll be able to come in here. But you won't want to drive over your tank, right?
Or I guess,
There's actually enough space from the top where the porch is, I would think, to be able to get around to that top area. Yeah, in that area there.
Yep. I mean, access could be here as well.
Yeah.
But, similarly to the previous public hearing and the discussion, it may just be, this could be a laydown area for, lumber.
Yeah.
Light stuff, okay. All right.
Materials.
or when there's no house in the way.
Yeah, right.
I'm fine.
I just have, as Jim alluded to, where the preliminary floodplain flood insurance rate maps have not been adopted and are effective yet, were the building, if the building is constructed prior to the adoption of those maps, the adoption of those maps, they would need to construct it to the effective maps code. So while certainly more conservative, it is a more conservative approach, but it does comply with building code for, if work was to occur over the winter. And secondly, is there a plan for dewatering? I see the crawl space slab is at 169.
So, sorry, for that area, this foundation wall, that'll be to separate the 2 areas with this, pitching back so that it would go towards the openings in the sides over here.
No, I was referring to when this foundation is being,
Oh, okay.
when this is being excavated.
I see.
What, with I don't know what the groundwater elevation, I don't have that with the, I didn't think to check it, but what's the plan for dewatering in the event, you know, the installation of the foundation is, you know,
Requires it, yeah, you know.
You know, it certainly, it is close. I don't know if, you know, a tank or if, you know, a geofilter bag.
Think about it now before.
Right, you know,
you
it
talked about
just,
bags.
so let's have something in, you know.
Well, you're going to have to
discuss.
do water to do the main section.
Exactly.
Because you're planning on having some sort of crawl space foundation there.
Yeah. So just have,
That makes sense, thank you. Yeah.
explore it now, you know, so we have something, again, when it gets to the stage of a contractor, they have the plan they have the understanding of this is what's to do, and if, you know, plans need to change or be modified, we can certainly address it at that time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any comments or questions from the members of the audience? Okay, so we need to continue the public hearing.
Yes, I can draft special conditions and send them out and include them for the commission's next meeting.
So we would continue to September 27th.
Yes.
Can I have a motion and continue the public hearing to September 27th?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
And thanks for your patience. I know you waited a long time.
Moving on to our 7:45 PM agenda item, public hearing for Hardy, 7 Boston Road. And again, thank you for your patience.
I always learn a lot when I come to your meetings.
Under Westford's non-zoning wetlands bylaw, Chapter 171, the Westford Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 7:45 PM in Meeting Room 201 at Town Hall, 55 Main Street, to consider the request for determination of applicability application of Ellen S. Hardy for the reconfiguration of a portion of a parking lot and installation of a pea-stone diaphragm within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands at 70 Boston Road.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am Ellen Hardy of 39 Main Street and now the president of the newly incorporated the Drew Farmhouse, Inc., which was established to create 5 apartments of workforce affordable housing at the 70 Boston Road Coldwell Banker Building, for which we signed a purchase and sale agreement last week. Although the work will be entirely interior renovation with no new construction on the land, the Director of Land Use Management asked us to have a new site plan done because the last one was dated 1993. And in doing that, and without my knowledge, and Matt pointed this out in his email to the Commission on August 3rd, Land Tech suggested this new drainage device at the rear of the existing parking lot in order to utilize the best management practice and control runoff. But it does intrude 10 feet into the 100-foot buffer zone. So at your meeting last month, you asked that we come back to you this month so we could have it as a public hearing with your input and public input to allow residents to comment, and your consideration of our request for determination of applicability, which brings me to you tonight. The 2 things that we did ask Land Tech to do was to reflect the fact that we will be taking out a substantial part of the parking lot that's on Boston Road, and that reduces stormwater runoff back down the hill to behind the building. And I, to be perfectly honest, defer to you and to Land Tech as to whether or not this drainage device and the intrusion 10 feet into the wetland is, you know, a better way to have this property. And we will do it if you suggest it. We can certainly live without it because it's been that way since 1865. But the parking in the back has only been there since the 1994 renovation. So I turn to your expertise as to how we should proceed from here.
This site plan's a little bit better than the one that was in the packet. I think some of the grays got washed out very much. And so the grayed area is the stone, is to defray runoff, and there are some minor changes, you know, just the turnaround radius is probably more so, yeah, or, per today's standards, as opposed to however it was just installed, likely installed when it was. Certainly the stone diaphragm, I feel that the stone diaphragm is a worthwhile improvement that does, slow down runoff and also infiltrate some prior to continuing north onto the town's land and the wetland shown, as Ellen said, 90 feet away. So I think this is an improvement for the buffer.
So it would also keep snowplow from taking out the grass at the edge of the pavement?
Maybe. I don't want to make any promises.
Okay. But yeah, it's something that we see quite often to improve the conditions at the edge of a parking area. Any members of the commission have comments or questions?
You're gonna have a nice sidewalk there too.
Won't that be that's just sort of icing on the cake, isn't it? The fact that will be going on just as we're finishing up our construction.
And just for the commission's consideration with respect to a negative determination, one condition may be to permit the maintenance of the stone infiltration, in perpetuity, so that, it's one of the, there's no questions asked, as it's,
Well, then it's a conditional negative.
I like them better.
So any comments or questions from members of the audience? So can I have a motion to issue a conditional negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's all good.
I thank you so very, very
much,
much.
Thank you so much.
See you for the next phase.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to our 7:50 PM agenda item, a minor modification request to install new water line at 6 and 8 Callista Terrace.
Yes, good evening. For the record, Russ Tedford with Hancock Associates. So we were here previously for both 6 and 8 Callista Terrace for backyard improvements. There's a resource area off property, but the 100-foot buffer casts the 100-foot and the 75 and the 50 are all casted on our property. And we are here for to propose a new water line. So just give a status update. Tree erosion controls are in, tree clearing has been done. While doing the tree clearing, they investigated the status of the water line, and they found out that it is going to travel under the portion of the wall that's 14 to 13 foot high, and it goes into the back of the building. Before they start any sort of wall construction, they need to replace and relocate that line to a more feasible condition in the event that it needs to be replaced. So the replacement, the proposed relocated line is going to come along the property line here. It's going to travel under this wall here, but this wall is only 4 feet. 4 feet high. Its blocks are a lot smaller than, say, the 14-foot portion. These are only 2-foot blocks that, in the event of replacement, could be easily facilitated. And I guess another update, because this plan does look a lot different than the approved plan. And the approved plan had a larger pool over in this section here and substantial flat work. Basically, the owner took and priced out that plan and it was not within his budget. So this is a revisited concept, smaller pool over here off to this side, and then just leaving the majority of this to be manicured lawn. And that, I believe, just sums up all of the changes here. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Comments or questions from members of the commission? Matt?
Nope, go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay.
This is it, everything.
So, the members of the audience, can I have a motion to approve the minor modification request to install a water line?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Yes.
Okay.
And moving on to our agenda item to ratify the emergency certificate for the Town of Westford Department of Public Works, East Prescott Street right-of-way.
I can certainly speak to this. The Director of DP Public Works, Steve Cronin, reached out to me Monday morning and was not in a great mood because, as seen in the Assistant DPW's email, DPW Director's email regarding how it was going to be repaired, a 20 by 20 by 15 foot sinkhole developed off of East Prescott Street due to a blockage of the culvert that runs under East Prescott Street. Long story short, the granite curbing for the side of the road was exposed in that 15-foot sinkhole. They wanted to repair it, emergency certification, certainly due to its threatening the condition of public safety. I issued, and in speaking with Steve today, they've made good progress, slower than anticipated, but they've installed erosion controls. They're protecting the outfall for the existing culvert, and they certainly feel that it will be a better condition, and don't anticipate future issues with this repair. And if the commission so chooses to ratify the emergency certificate that I issued on Tuesday.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, you didn't
Nicely
include the
done.
picture that,
Yeah, no, I forgot to include the picture, but yeah, there's.
he texted me the picture Monday morning of this sinkhole.
Monday morning.
Yeah, no, I started, Steve called and I answered the phone. I'm like, good morning, Steve. He goes, it is not a good morning. Do not be so presumptuous. And I was like, all right, what are we up to?
Sounds promising.
Yeah, it was just, yeah. I was just crossing my fingers that last night didn't make it worse.
I was thinking of today's couple storms, bands as well. I didn't want to ask because, I'm sure they're just as concerned. So, no, it was very glad that they're fixing it to current standards, and so it's gonna be good.
Okay, moving on to discussion and action items, the Stony Brook Conservation Area user concern follow-up. After the comments that we've received in email, the people who've come to speak to us, I decided that on sunny weekends and holidays, I was going to go down to the day beach at kind of random times in the early afternoon just to see what it was like. So I went the last Saturday in August, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of Labor Day weekend, and this past Saturday.
Good for you.
Yeah, the first Saturday, I met Jim and his dog Penny, and
Sitting at
There
the
were-
beach, doing the exact same thing.
2 other adults with dogs and 3 kids, or 2 kids?
There was a guy with a dog and a couple of kids going fishing.
Yeah, so there was like 6 or 8 of us.
Nice.
Labor Day weekend, I got there Saturday, it was just Jim and Penny.
I was there again with my dog.
That's hysterical.
Did you record it? No, it just, Sunday, there was a man and woman just enjoying the sunshine. Labor Day, there was a multi-generational family, maybe 10 people. A couple other groups of 2 or 3 people, dogs always on leash.
Nice
I'm not
idea.
seeing any litter. Labor Day, walking in on Ice House Road, The only litter I saw was one of those little Nutella snack packs.
Yeah.
Somebody dumped it and dropped it in the middle of the road. And then I went last Saturday, and there was a couple just leaving. And the only thing I found was somebody had bagged up some dog waste and left it on the ground next to one of the big trees that we have the signs posted on. But it was just, there was, you know.
Nice to hear.
And Labor Day weekend, I was expecting, the worst that we've heard. And I don't know whether, people going there, people contacting the police and the police visiting. I don't know if that got the message out, but it was just,
You were happy to see what you saw.
I was happy to not see anything bad.
Yeah.
I was sorry not to see more people enjoying it, but since I wasn't going to go spend the day there, I couldn't fault other people for not doing it. Jim, I don't know if you...
As Margaret said, we met up how many times? Three or four times. And I went a few more times and did laps to check the other beaches too. The same situation. Sometimes there are people there, sometimes there are somebody fishing, sometimes there's nobody.
That's good to hear.
But this was at the very end of the summer season. This was like Labor Day, plus or minus a week. And I had no problems whatsoever, so that's fantastic. But I think we still have to starting again the middle of next May. We'll have to start watching the same things.
I went between 1:30 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I just kind of, made it a little random. I will say that every time I was there, from the time I got on to Stony Brook, the entire place, I never saw a dog off leash. I saw a lot of dogs, and I was very impressed. Everybody had their dog on their leash.
Part of it, I think, was probably that weekend there was a live-action role-playing group renting pretty much the whole main camp facility, and they had put up signs that they were there. That if you see their props or whatever they use in their games, to just leave them alone and please keep your dog on a leash. And people were.
Yeah.
But I didn't even see them. They were all inside the buildings having meetings or something about whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that in December, there's a hearing for CPA, and that you should consider, some kind of an application
Well, yeah.
for the March season.
Well, and I think we need to talk about,
Somebody for 6 months.
well, it just, it's one thing to have adult members of the public go, they see behavior that's not consistent with the restrictions, they call the police non-emergency line, but it just, if we're putting somebody there, I think we need to think through what are the responsibilities of that person to be, because, if they're there and we do experience the kind of bad behavior that's been reported, what are we expecting them to do? Because we need to prepare them for, we need to be upfront in terms of...
We should look at the other applications and see what they did. It would be more than East Boston camps. That person would be able to look at other properties that we haven't had chances perhaps to look at. Okay?
Well,
so...
yeah, and I agree with that in the grand scheme of things, but I also think that because of the types of problems we've talked about, I'm also thinking that we, with dogs not on leashes, with the things we've seen at the beach, is while we might, in the grand scheme of things, be thinking about all of our properties, I think going into this, we may want to make it clear that Stony Brook Conservation Area is our top priority.
Yeah, so whoever is doing this can make sure that it's a daily visit or whatever, whatever this looks like. I don't know what this looks like.
Well, and
but I
that's the
think it's a
thing.
beginning, and we wouldn't hear that we don't have the finances for it. That's why I'm directing you in this particular place. Plus, I know it's been used before in another town with CPA money.
Yeah.
So I think all of that's in line, and I think the time has come that we should take advantage of that if we can.
Yeah, that, if the dogs are more frequent, dogs off leash are more frequent in the morning, it may be the person goes once, in the morning, and then again later in the afternoon when there's more beach.
But if we get them the first thing, then we'll build, or do it simultaneously.
I think we need to do it because we need to know. we need to know what we're asking for, because that may dictate the pool of applicants we get.
I'll pull up, if I can, the applications that have been successful, if I can, the one or two, and we'll see what they propose that this person did, and then we can call that town and talk to somebody, or Matt can,
Jim?
Matt, does the town have some kind of like interagency transfer where if the Conservation Commission was going to hire a police officer, that we'd transfer money from one of our accounts to one of theirs or something? I know if they do a detail, they get paid by the vendors, who then just add it to the contract.
Yeah, I mean, we get bills from the police department.
Okay, they do that, all right. Because something like that, I think, would be one way to do it, with allocating a certain amount of money from whatever source the money comes from, and then give a list of activities we want that person to perform. It's not go out there every day, but it's to go out on a random basis on nice days, not rainy, cloudy, lousy, miserable, horrible, snowy days. That's when nobody's going to be walking their dog and no one's going to be at the beach. But in the summertime, from May to September, mostly beautiful Saturdays or Sundays. If it's dog walkers, maybe a few non-raining weekday mornings, those kind of things, and look and enforce the laws, enforce the bylaws, the town bylaws, and the property rules, which are well posted. And
Right, it would be somebody comfortable saying to people, your dog needs to be on a leash.
Yeah, right.
And maybe saying that to somebody who is a decade or two older than they are. And so those, some of this is thinking through, what does this job look like for the applicants?
We have a couple of funds that are ours. It would be important to know whether any of them would be allowed to be used for paying, the policeman or whatever for.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I've actually asked that question.
If it's allowed, we could ask for it out of other funds. I'm not thinking of everything coming from the CPC.
Yeah.
That way, when you're talking about a police officer, and where do we pay them from? Where are we allowed to pay them from?
in the town bylaws, there's only certain people that are authorized to actually enforce the rules and the regulations and the bylaws. And the police departments, there's you. I think we are too, but I don't want to do it.
We're not doing that, and you're not doing
Exactly.
I understand what you mean. That's a good point in terms of.
That's why I said
making sure that enforcement and education.
They're two different things.
Whether a person can educate, but if it gets to the scope of enforcement, that's a whole other issue.
Moving on. I'm freezing.
That's
Why
a
am I
good
cold?
point to bring up. I appreciate it.
Must be tired.
Okay. So, moving on to Edwards Wood Conservation Area.
I never heard back from DPW about whether or not they could help with disposal of anything. I did, the DPW?
Okay.
I did go down there today, and there's more grass clippings, there's yard waste, and now there's a big pile of bittersweet with the berries on it that I'd really love to get out of there.
I'll try to stop out there so I can direct, if we can get that removed and get it to a point where DPW can, it's, that they know, here's where, put the cone with it, like when you're getting the mulch delivered, it's here, put it right here,
Right.
Have it be clear for them, this is what we'd like for them to remove, and, I'll follow up with DPW.
And I have volunteers in the community that would be happy to put everything in a pile.
Right, yeah, and it's always kind of dicey when things get started to put in a pile. What else shows up? I've been a part of some Earth Day cleanups that on a Saturday where the bags of trash get left till Monday morning, and then a dishwasher shows up. So I understand the point, but we can coordinate with DPW to make sure that. Get some assistance on the disposal.
Okay. Request for certificate of compliance.
This was a project, some hardscaping, landscaping on a lot on Nabnasset. They were improving their parking area with a pervious paver, the X's kind of configuration. They've submitted a hand annotated and colored kind of as-built. I stopped out today. Things look good. The site looks stable. The erosion controls are still there. The straw wattle has disintegrated, but the netting is still there. So I would recommend issuing it, and I do recommend issuing it, and it is in substantial conformance with the approved plan. But I'm not going to send it to them until they can verify that the erosion controls have been removed, satisfactorily, have been removed from the site. But the site looks good.
Okay. Can I have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 334-1785, 28 Lakeshore Drive North?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes for August 23rd. Now, Matt, did you remember, I had asked, because I had thought that there was going to be the potential for future compliance inspections at 31 Bridge Street.
I didn't review the meeting but within the order of conditions, it does allow for site visits to ensure compliance. So that's, I think it certainly, I do remember that we had it discussed. I didn't recall, I didn't see anything in the actual order of conditions explicitly, but there is the general condition that does allow for site inspections.
At the very least, we should get a copy of whatever, whatever paper that Mr. Franklin gives his tenants, and then we should check.
Right, that is on, I set that calendar reminder.
But it just, in terms of for the minutes, under that particular agenda item, I wanted to add the sentence that said, future site inspections would confirm compliance with storage restrictions, just so that it's part of the public record that says, you've said you're going to do this for your for your clients, and it's just clear in the record that there will be compliance checks in the future.
I'd like to go on those site visits, at least a few of those site visits with you.
I'll certainly try to remember.
Badge.
Okay, so
No site inspections.
Fence viewer, site inspector, election warden.
any other comments or changes to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for August 23rd, 2023 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then, Matt, we have a site visit to schedule?
Yes, no site visits to record. As sent to the commission today, the builder and engineer of 12 Castle Road is requesting a site visit with the commission prior to kind of developing the next steps. They're experiencing groundwater breakout across the driveway, and in the location of the electrical box that the abutter was concerned about. And they want to have the commission view it on site because the photo doesn't do it justice. Yesterday when I was out on site with them, it just kept perking out of the ground and across the driveway. And so, the engineer in the email had some kind of potential ideas and potential strategies, but wanted to kind of have the commission come out to the site and see where and what's kind of being
The
proposed.
magnitude?
Yeah, proposed before coming in for a modification, because I think the site is it's certainly, and this was outside the area of the limit of work, outside of the electrical junction box being replaced.
Jim?
Is that box, it's a transformer, or is it just it means to go from above overhead power lines underground?
I think it's underground to distribution.
It's underground to underground?
Yes.
Okay. And who does it actually belong to? The electric company?
Yes.
National Grid?
There's there's plans to replace it because it's when you get out on site, it's quite corroded at ground level.
Okay.
Likely due to
That's good that there's plans to replace it.
This groundwater.
We just got to make sure with the plan to
Yeah,
replace
but
it is in a good
we need
location.
to deal with the water.
So,
Put it in a good
on
location.
Monday, we'll leave at 11.
Yep.
Okay, Jim? we'll leave.
I mean, we can figure that out, you know,
Okay.
it's just,
I'll
you know,
tell Patty. I have to-
acknowledge, you know,
Yeah, I just have to tell Patty, that's all.
have in the public record that, you know, the commission
Yeah.
is meeting on a site.
Okay.
So,
So,
is it still tomorrow?
yes, tomorrow
yeah,
at
so
3.
tomorrow at 3 for some of us, and Monday at 11 for
For
others.
Jim and Marilyn. Oh, I put my pen away.
Any other business?
Want a pen?
Yes, for a minute, thank you.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.